Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. I'm Tennison.
And I'm Ginelle. Thank you for joining us as we discuss topics and give practical tools that help you live, grow, and be in healthy, joy-filled relationship with God, yourself, and others.
For more information and resources, or if you're looking for coaching, connection, and community, please visit tableandwellco.com. We hope you enjoy this podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. This is episode number 9, and we are in the conclusion of our child maturity stage podcast. Whatever, you know what I mean. You know exactly what I mean. But yeah, so this it's interesting because this stage, as we've talked about it, has been a little longer than I think we both anticipated, but it's been really good.
Yeah, it has been.
To dig into some of those things.
There's so much here.
I know there's a lot here, and a lot of, I think, a lot of the spaces that we as adults may find ourselves struggling in can link right back to this stage. And so
really infant and child.
Right, absolutely. So there's a lot to talk about to that.
Right. This is it. Yeah. Like, this is what it's about, really, and what's so critical. We'll talk about adult skills, and we'll talk about parent skills and onward, but really these infant and child, if these are not repaired, those other skills aren't going to have anything to build on.
Right. Yep. So it's been really good.
Yeah.
So, but in today's conclusion of the child's maturity stage, we're going to be talking about, again, the practical personal tasks that you can do to begin to meet some of the needs and the tasks and things that you need in this stage to be fully mature. And then we're also going to talk about what it might look like for you as a community member to kind of give some practical community tasks that you can do to help others if you notice others are have gaps in this maturity level, things that you can do as someone in the community to help raise them up in this level of maturity as well.
Yeah, that's great. And or maybe things you may need from your community.
That's true as well. Yeah. And I venture to say too, because most people that are watching are either parents or and I'm assuming are adults. And so these are some things too, just for your own kids.
Yeah.
And that
as your parents, these are things you can be doing.
Yeah. So kids that you have in this space here between 4 and 12. So
and or in reality, likely older.
Yeah.
Because we
didn't actually know these.
Nobody's helped us understand that this is really what I should be helping my kids grow through between those ages. So lucky you if you have kids between 4 and 12.
Yes.
And if you don't, this can also still be done. They still need a parent to help them grow through these spaces.
Absolutely.
All right. So the practical personal tasks.
Yes.
Our part to do to grow through this child level maturity.
Yeah. So number 1 is don't sit in the triggers. So whether that be sadness, anger, shame, judgment, like we talked about, I believe in the intro of this, we talked about you may be triggered through some of these. Don't sit there. Return to joy as quickly as possible. And again, return to joy, that idea of, I know that someone's glad to be with me in the middle of these feelings. So being able to access that space and return to joy. And
I know somebody's glad to be with me sounds so entirely cheesy. Like, that's a nice idea. Yeah, right. Like, I'm just supposed to know that. Really, it's getting back to that feeling of, I'm okay.
I'm okay.
And that comes out of joy and having built joy and identity. So returning to joy is returning to the truth of who you are.
Yep.
And your stability and ability to be okay in the midst of those big feelings.
Yes.
So returning to joy, as much as it is about knowing the gladness that someone's glad to be with you, and it may look like needing to invite someone into that space to learn how to work through these, but eventually you should actually be able to show up for yourself in this space and return yourself and self-soothe and be able to say and know
that you're okay.
I'm going to be okay, even if the circumstance doesn't change, even if the feeling is still present, because the goal is that it would still be present.
The goal is not to ignore or to dismiss the feeling
or numb it. But to be with it and it to be with you and let it inform you whatever it needs to inform you. But to not sit in it and let it bottom you out.
Yes.
And if that sounds like a really nice idealized idea and you're like, yeah, right, how am I going to learn how to do that? I have no idea where to start. Highly recommend collabs and highly recommend help from a therapist. A lot of times this is the work of a therapist to sit with you in your big emotions and honestly, this was part of what we had to do in the beginning. It was, we're so irritated. Yeah, we didn't have community. And we're like, well, I guess we have to pay people to sit with us, like, and to be what we needed and what we need right now in community. I guess we're just going to have to pay professionals to do that. And it was irritating, but it worked.
Yeah.
And it's true. And the fact that I knew that so-and-so was going to show up on Tuesday at 10 o'clock and they would be there to hold my feelings, to help me navigate what was going on in my life was worth it. So well worth it.
Yes.
It was such an investment in myself. And it was part of how I was able to move through those triggers and know that I am actually okay, because I had another person to be with me until I was able to be with myself.
It's really good. Yep. Identify 1 or 2 tasks to prayerfully begin to work on. So as we talked about, we in the last podcast, we went through the 2 podcasts ago, we went through the tasks of what the child level maturity tasks are for that you need to do and accomplish. So you want to go back and listen to those. We do have some resources also on the website where you can go and see kind of what those tasks are exactly. But just prayerfully say, okay, Lord, which task should I be working on? Where do I see the gaps in my own maturity space? And then what are those tasks that I can be doing to actively work on to begin to fill those gaps? And so I think that's really great. And so we've been doing that as well. And it helps.
Yeah. And it might be something as simple as, okay, I honestly don't really know how to do hard things. Like I can see where every time I come up against a hard thing, I bail.
Yeah.
Or I back out, or I squirrel, or I make myself really busy doing some other things that are maybe a lot of work, but aren't hard for me. They're really natural for me. Okay. So one of the things I'm going to work on over the next month is paying attention to where hard things are showing up in my day.
Yep.
And choosing into those.
Yeah.
Or a lot of us are carrying around things that we know we should be doing, quote unquote, and would be best for us, and we won't make the choice of disciplining ourselves to do them. And we're even doing that right now. Like some of you have probably heard of 75 hard. We've created a 60 soft.
Yep, pretty much.
And we literally said, okay, what are 7 things that we need to build discipline in our lives, that we know that they're hard things, so we don't typically choose into them on a daily, or we find ourselves often making other people and other things more important than these forms of self-care or these forms of connection even.
Yeah.
And we charted it out. And so we're making a goal every single day to do those. And some days we do great and some days we don't. And we're learning what got in the way of that.
Yep.
But even maybe something as simple as that, where, okay, what are 3 hard things that I continually avoid that I know really are best for me?
Right. And then choosing
can I do
those?
Yeah. Can I do those for 60 days straight?
Yeah.
What if I tried? Yeah.
That's a great way to start. Absolutely. Again, because you're growing that skill of doing hard things and finding out what's best for you.
Discernment.
And there we go. All of them.
All of it is
fits
right
in
there.
that space.
Yep.
Absolutely. Another practical personal task that you can do to grow in this area is to seek out others who have the skill or the ability that you're wanting to grow in, and ask them to tell you their stories, and walk the leadership square with you. And so that idea of, you could pick anything, but there's something out there that you want to grow in this area, and you have a friend who is really strong in this space, or you can see that there's growth for them in that area. Ask them to say, hey man, how did you get to this space? How did you what are you doing to better yourself or to grow in this area? Let them tell you their story, and then see if they will be willing to walk with you through that to where you can begin to do it on your own. And then you've got someone championing you. They're in your corner. They're supporting you. They're all those things that you need. They're going to give you some healthy criticism and some feedback on maybe choices you're making, all the different things this is actually a really good one, because if that person truly gets invested in that space, then all those needs that actually as a child that you need, they're gonna happen, because they're
learning to identify what you need right now and asking for it as you're learning this new space. And that could be a skill that you want to learn that you like. What's coming to mind for me right now is I've just leaned into being a doula, and I'm about I guess about a year and a half in. And there are spaces and places that I need to grow in order to kind of grow to my next level of being a doula. And so I'm inviting someone into this space right now who's further down the road than me. And she might tell me things I already know.
Yep.
Or I might see her do things I already know. But it reinforces that.
Yeah.
And I'm having to assess her time investment of like, what do I actually need from this time investment from her?
That's good. Yeah.
I'm not expecting her to figure that out. That's part of my work to figure that out. Oh, I know I'm going to end up in uncomfortable spaces that are going to force me to push past some places that I would probably shy away from.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to get a choice when I'm with her in that scenario.
Yep.
And whereas if I was alone, I probably would avoid it.
Yep.
And so it's so good to invite mentors into your life in areas where you want to grow, whether it's skill based or just even life discipline based. Yeah, you're actually a part of a men's fitness group that meets and physically you're doing things that you would never choose into if you were alone.
Oh no, never ever. I wouldn't, but they're pushing me.
Right.
Because you just do whoever is leading the workout that day, you just do whatever they have.
Right.
And you do it. And you do it to the best of your ability. And, they're gracious and you can modify and all that. But the beauty is that I'm being pushed outside of my comfort zone.
Right.
In spaces of working out that I would never have just chosen to walk into on my own.
Right. And I think what's interesting even about that is that it's not really about the skill of working out. It's like not about whether or not you can do 1,000 push-ups or not. It's about all the stuff that's being learned about, you're learning about yourself and your ability to push past what you thought was possible, or your ability to say yes to the hard thing. And like you're learning all these soft skills and all this maturity within getting the 1,000 push-ups done, which obviously is not 1,000, but
no, thank God.
We won't talk about your push-up count.
I mean, I'm not horrible.
Teasing. I don't know what it is.
But I'm learning, like, for instance, just recently, it was like I've had two interesting experiences in that. One was I pushed through when I would normally want to quit, because one, you've got guys around you that are, one, peer pressure, sometimes not not a bad thing,
right?
But two, they're also encouraging you and they're with you in it, and they actually notice when like you're, maybe not having a good day or when you are off a little bit, and so they're asking. So for me personally, two things. One, like I said, I pushed through when I would have normally quit, and then one time, I went even though I was incredibly tired and did not want to go. But I got up that morning and I'm like, I'm gonna go. And it was just in that moment, it was about just showing up.
Right. Yeah.
Doing the hard thing of showing up.
Right. That's really.
And
good.
I did it, and I reaped the benefits from it. But but normally, I wouldn't have
chosen that for
myself alone.
Yeah.
But so.
Yeah. And I think what's also really cool about that group is that if you can't meet the goal, they will share the weight of the goal.
Yeah.
Which is mind blowing to me. It makes sense when there's 1,000 push-ups and you run out at 900 and then they split the 100 between them. Like that is so powerful. I don't know exactly how to translate that into other areas of life, but
yeah.
Golly. And I think that's kind of what we do as parents with kids, right? Like we get you to a point where you've done all you can do, and then no problem, we'll pick up the rest and we'll carry the weight and finish the task with you so that the task gets completed and you can feel the satisfaction
of completing it.
But I didn't leave you to do that alone.
Yeah.
But what if we did that more for each other in everyday life? And that's a whole other tangent, but could it be in this conversation, as once we switch to community, like where are places that we can show up as mentors?
Yes.
And bring people through the leadership square. And if there's 1,000 push-ups to do and the person we're mentoring can only get to 900,
right?
Then
the community says,
all right, split it with
who's got 10, who's got 10, who's got 10, and then you do them together,
right?
And you finish out.
So powerful.
Yeah, that 1,000. Anyway, that's really good. Let's see, where are we at? When you feel triggered, frustrated, anxious, or angry, work to identify what you need. I would even say, first of all, work to identify what you're feeling. because you might not know exactly what you're feeling. So work to identify what you're feeling, and then work to identify what actually would satisfy you. What do you need in that moment of anger, frustration, sadness, whatever it might be. So also identify if you're placing an expectation on someone else for the need. You should be meeting yourself. And so we talked about that as well, that discernment piece of knowing. So again, figuring out what you need, and then discerning, is this a need I can meet myself? Is it a need that I need someone else to meet for me? Or is it a need that God can meet for? I need God to meet for me.
Right.
And then do the work of asking yourself, God or the other person.
Right. But I think this is makes a good point too. Like, also discern, have you placed an expectation on someone else to meet the need?
Yeah.
Already, you
Yes.
know, and so part of what you're feeling when you're triggered is
yes.
I'm upset, angry, or disappointed because I had an
And
expectation
they didn't
here
meet the need. Yeah.
for somebody to do something that they're not doing.
That's good.
And then realizing, like, one, I didn't even know what I needed, and I had this expectation sitting out there that somebody else would figure that out.
Right.
Okay, now I know what I need, and I did place an expectation. Okay, so now addressing that and realizing, likely most of the time when we're doing this, likely it's something we can actually meet for ourselves.
Yeah.
Many times.
Yep.
Not all the time. And we never promote living life by yourself, meeting all of your own needs.
Right.
However, particularly in child level maturity things, we are now actually adults who can do this for ourselves.
Yeah, and I think just kind of stair-stepping this down a little bit more too is, so like Ginelle was just saying, like, in reality, is this a need that I can meet myself? You know, I talked about that a little bit. And then, but if you're not able to meet the need, then because it's hard, or because there's an emotional need attached and you're trying to get the need met. So basically, and all of what we're saying is just use discernment in what is the need, and are there expectations you put on someone else to meet that need when really it's not on them to meet that need. And then discern whether or not can I meet it myself? Do I need to ask someone? Why can't I meet it myself if I can't? Or can I, and I just choose not to because whatever the case may be.
Because it feels really hard,
or really hard.
There's emotional need that is needing to be met outside of me here. Yeah.
And so just doing
or a relational need.
Yeah, doing the work to really zero in on the need, and then the why the need is there, and then discerning to ask the right person to meet that need for you. Is that person able to meet the need? They're not. Why? So just all of that. So that's those.
Yeah, and what we're encouraging you to do here is not pendulum swing.
Yes.
You know, to where it's like, well, I had this expectation for other people to meet my need, but clearly nobody's ever going to show up for me. So I'm just going to do everything myself. Like, don't pendulum swing. There is nuance and there is discernment to be had here, which is also a skill you're working on. So just navigate that space, stay curious there, and notice when you're feeling like an infant and expecting someone else to read your mind.
Yep.
And when you get triggered by that, when they're not reading your mind, and when you have expectations at play. And then do the work to see it through.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always an opportunity to grow.
Yeah, because this in this too is in that, I think, all of these, but in this one too, there is a opportunity actual for relational connection, deep relational connection with yourself, with other people, with God. Like you're inviting them into a relational connected space.
And I think it's worth saying here too, in this practice of tasks you can do, is even if you figured out like, oh, this is actually a need I should be meeting for myself, and I place this expectation on this other person, say this friend or the spouse or whoever, or if you're a leader and you've placed it on somebody else, don't be afraid to go back and still have the conversation.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, oh, I realized, you know how we had all this tension happening, or we had this upset? What was actually happening was I had placed an expectation on you to meet my need. And I actually didn't even know what the need was. And I've spent some time, and now I know it was this need.
Yeah.
And I went ahead and fulfilled that for myself because I could actually do that. I wasn't really aware that I could, but I did. And but I wanted to follow through and say that to you, that, and if this comes up again, if you might notice this, can you help me notice too?
That's
because
good.
it doesn't, like, You don't do this once and you're like, I never place
good.
expectations on anybody else ever again, and I now know how to meet all my own needs. No.
Yeah.
Notice in the childhood maturity, this takes 8 years. And so and I think we've really learned this over the course of the last 5 years as well, as, this is beautiful and it's possible, and it unfortunately takes time. There are points along this journey where we're like, oh, we're having a lot of relational discomfort again.
Yeah.
Or growth discomfort or irritation between us because, now you're leaning into teenage tasks. I'm leaning into teenage tasks.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to address some of those, those young adult things that I didn't develop before. And now you're acting like a teenager and I don't find it very attractive. So just know that this stuff is learned over many experiences over time. And it's not just a one-time thing, but the communication and having similar language is so powerful. And it's a lot of why we do collabs, is to help couples have common language around this. It's so much easier when you have common language and agreement to say to your spouse, hey, I'm working on the childhood task of doing hard things. And I can partner, your spouse can partner with that.
Yeah.
And give you grace and also challenge you and spur you on in that while you're working on something else. Or you could say, oh, hey, when this is coming into play and I'm expecting you to read my mind.
Right.
Can we both be honest? That's what's at play, and I need your help recognizing that, because I may not always see that that's what I'm doing.
Yep.
And you can do that in community as well.
Yeah, that's really good. Really, really good. And it just promotes growth, promotes communication, promotes connection, all of those things. And all the things that, again, we need at this stage of maturity and beyond. Go ahead.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely. Yes.
Can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
I was just thinking about this because a lot of the people that we're talking to have children between 4 and 12, and you're realizing you're going to try to learn some of these childhood tasks alongside your children.
Yes.
You're like, I see why it's really important to teach my child to do hard things. And, I'm also going to be learning how to do hard things. And that's a place I need to grow. Don't be afraid to be honest with your kids too.
Yeah.
I think
good.
Somehow we think as parents that we have to have it all together or have it all figured out and always do the right thing the first time. And because we're the adult, we should just intrinsically know certain things. And one of the things that has really helped me is my child is learning how to be a child. At the same time, I'm learning how to be a parent.
Yes. Yep.
And if I can be honest about that, then that creates lots of space for growth and creativity and possibility, and a lot less space for criticism and judgment and failure.
And pressure.
To know that you are going to get it wrong.
Yep.
And your child is going to get it wrong. And you're going to try something and you're going to realize that is not the outcome that I wanted.
Right.
That was not it. And having this conversation with your kids, there may be things here that you're like, wow, I didn't know that this was a thing for me, and I can see how it's showing up in my relationship with my children, and being honest with them about it. Hey, buddy, I didn't realize that I was expecting you to read my mind.
Yeah.
And expecting you to please me. And I realized I've placed this expectation on you to perform for my approval. We had a dad in our collab that realized that, I was placing all this expectation on my child that was uncommunicated in order for him to earn my love.
Yeah. Yep.
And because that's how I was taught to do it.
That's how I was taught. Yeah.
And now here I am repeating that, and that's the last thing I want for my kid.
Right.
And so and so he went and had that conversation with him of hey, I want to try to learn a new way, and this is what I'm thinking, or this is what I see is happening. And I think we've been taught to not say anything and just make a change.
Right. Because we're the parent.
Because we're the parent.
Again, age appropriate conversation with your kids for sure. Yep.
Right. But we just want to encourage you to don't avoid the conversation of this. Don't avoid the uncomfortableness of, hey, this is what I see. This is what I want to be different. This is what I want to try. Yeah. Will you try with me?
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So another practical personal task is to develop your personal resources and talents, which we talked about before. That is basically lean in. If you find yourself in a place in life that has been basically scripted for you, and you are a attorney because your whole family has been attorneys,
yeah.
and you could care less about being an attorney, but you did the thing, and what you really desire is to paint or to do something different. I'm not saying leave being an attorney. What I am saying is go discover who you actually are. Lean into those spaces that make you passionate and alive. And many of us have this like expectation of, I need to get to this point and that will mean fulfillment for my life.
Right.
And then we get to be adults and we check that box and, okay, now I'm the attorney and I feel unfulfilled.
Yes.
Often because you're way more complex than that, than what you do for a profession too. So just go explore.
Yep. And just if I could speak to that too real quick, it's I think part of that too is like, what brings you satisfaction? What's something that you'll find satisfying to actually go and discover and talent and try something new? Maybe you know, it could be anything. Go to a cooking class, or even I would encourage you in this space, even if something interests you that maybe you've never tried before, or you're like, I've always thought about doing XYZ. Do it. Just take a moment and take some time and just go do it, and then see how that sits on you. See how
you don't have to commit to doing it for the rest of your life. Go try it once.
Yeah. And can you wear, does that coat feel good? Like, this, I could see myself, this could be a great hobby to have, or this could be great, you know, whatever it might be. But just do it. Develop the personal resource and talent. Because I will tell you this, everything that you learn and everything that you do, specifically hard things, but at some point, I really believe whatever skill it is will translate. Something from that can translate into everyday life and the things that you do. So don't sell yourself short.
Yeah.
In that
and
space.
Don't dismiss those hidden passions that you have.
Yep.
Learn what satisfies you and how to control your cravings. And that, I mean, we've been mentioning this 1,000 times over, but those cravings are a key part. If you notice that you're a person who often cannot control your cravings, there is likely an emotional piece to that you are having an overwhelm of feeling, good, bad, or indifferent. Well, probably the high or low maybe might be a better way to put that. That is that you have not learned how to soothe. And the way you've learned how to soothe it is through a craving or an addiction of some sort, or a numbing tool of some sort. And what we want to invite you to do is figure out that satisfaction piece is, I'm glad to be with myself and I'm okay. I can feel satisfied within my own presence, being with myself, and coming back to that space rather than exploring something outside such as a craving in order to be able to cut off my inability to be with me.
It's not about well, with the cravings piece anyway, I'll say this, it's because usually those cravings, I think you said this, come from some other feelings that you might be having, and it's not about ignoring those feelings.
Right, exactly.
It is about embracing them.
It's actually about leaning into them.
Leaning into what we say is kind of ride the wave of the emotion, and just understand that, but being able to know that you're okay and come back to that space. If you can do that, again, return to joy, self-soothing, whatever that looks like, will help you be able to control those cravings.
And we're saying these things, and some of you might be listening and you're like, yeah, okay, just self-soothe. Yeah, okay, just control the craving. Just be in joy. The reason why we can't expound on the how-to exactly of that is because that's going to be so different for each person. That is not a prescription of just do X and you'll be fine. There is a lot of things that we do to build joy prior to these moments, so that way we actually have a joy well to pull from when we feel overwhelmed and we need some help to balance out. But we also have things that we work on and do that are specific to people. Of like, this is how you're best able to return to joy, or this is how you're best able to meet that feeling where it is and to hear it and to give it space. Here are some tools and techniques to do that. And those are things that we explore. Those are also things that if you can find a good counselor or therapist, that will also help you explore. But those are so unique to people. So we're saying some generalized, like, just soothe. because we can't say this is the thing that everyone will benefit from.
Right. And we can do that. We have individual coaching where we can do that in that space, and also we go back, but always our labs, our spaces too, where you're able to practice and figure out what those things would be for you to best control the cravings, figure out what satisfies you, self-soothe, all of that. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yep. Find those clothes that tailor fit you.
Yes.
For your best well-being.
Yep. So
another task that you could do would be to learn your family history and how you fit and your purpose in the big picture of life.
Yeah.
This one just kind of depends on your personality too, or maybe how painful your family history may be. But if you feel like you just don't really belong in this world, like you don't really know your place, how you fit as a unique individual, this would be a really great thing to do.
Yeah.
You do belong here. You do have a place. You were born into the time and place with the DNA you have for a reason.
Yes.
All of that heritage is in you, good, bad, or indifferent, right? And so learn about that. Learn what you're working with. Learn what the dreams of your forefathers were, because they had dreams.
Yes.
You have dreams,
yes.
And you're going to pass them on to your legacy. And so the more healing you can do with your lineage in line, with your family history in mind, the more you're actually generationally changing the world as you're changing yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I know that my healing and my growth directly benefits my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren and all those coming after that I'll never see.
Yeah.
And so, but you can't do that and say, well, it starts with me and I don't really care what came from the past.
Right.
Like, there's also a place for you within that
consideration. Yeah.
Yep, because you're inviting the shift as a whole.
Yes.
Not just like you came out of nowhere and none of that mattered. There is a piece that is pulled in, and that, yes, you're going to transform it and change it for the generations to come. And part of that is knowing what you're changing from the generations past.
You're bringing all that in with you. So that you said it.
Last one is
practice.
Practice. I feel like our first 50 episodes of the podcast were practice. But again, it's the thing of, you're not going to learn this overnight.
Nope.
You're going to try and fail.
Yep.
And if you can give yourself grace that we are just practicing here.
Everything's practice.
Yep. And we would do that a lot in our relationship and learning these skills. And it gave us so much power and grace.
Freedom
to, like, so this is an issue. We now have language for it.
Yep.
I don't expect you to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
But I do expect you to practice.
Right.
And I have the same expectation for me. I'm not going to expect myself to get it right the first time, but I am committed to practicing.
And and also what it does, again, like I said earlier, it invites connection and invites communication, because now you can have the conversation of, hey, this was going on in me, and I saw this was happening, and I saw the attempt and I felt the attempt, but that wasn't actually what I needed in that space. And so, but and it gave so much freedom, is because it was like, granted, yes, I want to be able to do the things that Ginelle needs to feel safe and secure in those moments, but for her to be able to also say, okay, I see the effort. It's not exactly what I need, and I appreciate the effort, but this is actually what I really need in that space. And I see you attempting to do it. And for me, it alleviated this feeling of shame of not meeting it, and this thing where I'm like, okay, yep, you're right. And I was able to, in my maturity, be able to hear what she said, take that in, and go, okay, next time, or when we hit this moment again, I know how better to meet that need.
Well, and we often discovered too that it was also in the ask. Like, I might have asked you to meet a need a certain way, and what I thought that meant and what you thought that meant were two different things.
Yes.
And then usually in the beginning days, we didn't have the skill to even say, like, that actually wasn't, I didn't really ask that. I know I said this, and I see you attempting to meet that, but I didn't really mean the way you you interpreted that differently than what I meant.
Yeah.
So what I should have said to make that a clear ask, a complete ask, is have said this.
Right.
Or I did ask for this, and you did exactly what I asked for. And turns out, even though I said that's what I needed, what I actually needed now that I know was this over here. And so can you help me remember next time that we kind of run into this space and I run into this need, that this was actually what would have felt more satisfying, even though I thought originally it would have been what I asked for the first time.
It's been really great.
Yeah, that has been such a helpful tool. Again, to have that mutual language of we're learning here and we're practicing here and we're trying and failing together with our hearts toward one another and championing one another's growth.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So good.
All right. So practical community tasks.
Yes.
Meaning what we need to do as a community for others that we're helping to grow up through child maturity, whether we're a parent or just a community member, and what we may possibly need from our community to help us grow, even as adults, through some of these child maturity tasks.
So the first one would be help others identify their needs and encourage them to ask for those needs. So again, helping them identify their needs. So that, again, that's a parent role or a caregiver role, is that you're saying, even if you can even see the need. Don't just, in this stage, you're not just jumping in and giving it to them like you would do if they were in the infant stage. In this stage is, I see the need. Now let's actually be curious together to help you identify what that need is. And then after they identify it, then help them to ask for that need.
You may notice as a parent of young adults that you have done a lot of work assuming what your young adult needs. And for some reason, you don't have a very good relationship. Turns out you weren't meeting their needs at all. You just were meeting the needs you assumed they had because you're not having this conversation. And so that can come into play here. And this is something I've had to learn because I was incredible at being that pseudo-mature person who had to anticipate the need and meet it, and ended up missing relationship with my daughter because I was spending so much energy deciding for her what she needed from me rather than asking her what she needed from me, because the risk was she was going to ask for something I wasn't comfortable giving,
right,
or maybe didn't even agree that she needed,
right,
but the relationship came when I was willing to ask.
Yes.
And now we actually have something to work on. Like I actually can know her and she can actually know her, and I can partner with that knowing.
Yes. And
this also comes in other community spaces where you see people also just like doing things and behaving in certain ways that are attempts to communicate what they need, but aren't actual communications of what they need. Yeah. Whether it could be on a team or, again, in a community or a church environment, in a family, when you have all these behaviors arising, helping that person pair back to, okay, what is it that you actually need here? Because I actually really want to see you get what you need. I'm here. I'm for you. I'm with you. But I'm not sure we're going to win if I just respond to this behavior. Yeah. So can we get together and figure out what it is that you need here
in this moment?
And maybe what expectations might be at play.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good. Another community task would be to help others think through choices to the possible outcomes. So self-care, problem solving. So basically walking with people, helping them think through, I think in one of the tasks was the consequences of their actions or their decisions. And so helping them say, okay, so if you do this, then let's walk this out. What does this look like? And then helping them to see that. And so helps them problem solve, and it helps them to have critical thinking down the road to say, oh, wait, nope, that actually wasn't a great idea that I thought was a great idea, but it's actually not a good idea for this reason. And so you're helping them, again, form their identity. Discernment is in that space, and you're helping them walk this life out in a way that is going to be what's best for them. And you could walk it out to the end, and it's like, okay, that's a really good outcome. Is that what you want?
Right.
Is that actually the outcome that you want from this?
It could be a good outcome.
It could be a great outcome. And they're like, I mean, it's good, but that's not exactly what I was hoping for. And then you can go, okay, then go back to need. Well, what are you hoping for? And then, so helping them discover this process and helping them to navigate those decisions and walk those things out.
I think it comes into play in some of the spaces that we talked before too, about people who are always serving other people.
Yeah.
They're likely going to be very excited about opportunities to serve through till sacrifice and self-denial. They're like, oh, I'm going to move to Africa and I'm going to serve these children in an orphanage. And it's like a dream come true. And you can see from the outside looking in that it's just more denial of self and inability to care for self. It's just going to multiply in that setting. And so like helping, not just watching that blindly, but even helping them see like, yes, you have this deep passion to care for others. And how can we best make sure that you're cared for in that space?
Yeah, that's good.
Yep. Or like we talked about with the entrepreneur who's busy doing things all day, but they're not really moving toward what they're passionate, like what they actually really want. Yeah. This is another area where you can invite people to see like, yeah, you might get like, that's the outcome you want. All this energy you're spending, is that really getting you
what you
to
want.
That space?
Yeah, it's really good. Hand back hard things. Provide opportunity for self-managed success and failure.
That one's pretty self-explanatory.
It is. It's yep. Oh, you got this.
Yep. Just don't carry the weight.
Yeah.
Like any space where you notice as a parent, as a friend, as a spouse, where you're just carrying the weight for the other person because they don't have the muscles yet to carry it for themselves.
Yeah.
The longer you carry it, the less they're going to develop the muscles.
Right. And then the older they get, the harder it's going to be for them to actually develop the muscle.
Yep.
I would say that one, the doing hard things is, I mean, they're all critical. But if there's one...
That's the most important thing.
I'm speaking for myself. But again, all these skills are very critical. But the hard thing is because that I mean, it all affects so many different areas of life. But it giving it back to them and saying, hey, no, you can do this, and championing them and cheering them on. And I think it builds self-confidence in them. It will build identity. It builds like, I know I can do this. It's a huge one.
One piece I'd like to just caution, because likely if you are carrying majority weight for someone else that you're in relationship with, you're at fault too.
Yes.
I'm just going to say it.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just them that's created this scenario of unhealth where you're carrying a lot of the weight and they're not carrying their own weight. You likely played a part in that.
Right.
So what we're not encouraging you to do is go dump.
Right. Good call.
Back on them.
Yes.
It may take dumping if after a time you continually are handing them back their work to do and they're not willing to carry their work to do.
Right.
There may come a time where health will look like, okay, I'm going to draw a line here and sink or swim. I'm not picking you up anymore.
Yeah.
But just be mindful that you had a part to play if
Yes.
you notice you're a person who's carrying a lot of someone else's work or weight.
That's good.
And be kind in working through what does it look like for this to be handed over gradually and for them to get to have the time that's needed to mature.
Yeah.
And for me to learn how to let it go.
Yes.
Because there's also going to be a part for you
Yep.
that you're going to grieve the loss of that dependency
the
on
thing.
you and doing that for someone else.
So true. So very, very true. Walk with others to the leadership square. Again, pretty self-explanatory. So it could look like a mentoring situation. It could look like anything. I mean, it's...
There are 1,000 opportunities to do this in any given day.
Yep. And on any given thing.
Right, on anything.
Yeah. So just, again, it's the I do, you watch, I do, you help, you do, I watch, and then you do, I celebrate. And
can I just put a little plug in here for relational circuitry? So we just taught a webinar actually this weekend as well about relational circuitry. It's a key thing that we teach, and you will not be able to work through the leadership square if your relational circuits are not on. You're not even going to notice the opportunity to do this for someone else.
Yeah.
Because you're typically going to be operating in a space of, you know what, I'm just going to do it for myself.
do it myself. Yep.
And or you're just going to do it for yourself, and I could care less about what you're doing. I'm not going to mix with that. So having relational circuitry allows us, even if it's something we are doing ourselves, like we're not even talking about leadership square in the way of somebody else needs your help.
Yeah.
it could be that you could invite someone into something that you're doing to help increase their skill and just give them an opportunity to learn something. I want to make that clear really too, that like it's not about what need do you see and how can you help mentor someone through it. It could be, what are you amazing at? What comes really natural for you? Where do you shine? Where do you do something ordinary in a day? Like, can you cook a meal? There's a lot of people who can't cook meals. Don't know how. It could be something as simple as like, hey, young adult in my church, you want to come over and let's make a meal together? I'm telling you, it will make a huge difference in your community.
And this is one of those things too, guys. We call it, it's called, the leadership square, whatever, but it doesn't have to be any kind of formal arrangement or anything either. Like, you don't have to assume the role of mentor in their life.
Right.
It's every day, put a grocery list together. It's whatever it might be. So in that space too, that's really good. Yeah.
And then the very last piece is share your family history through stories.
Yes.
Some of you are incredible storytellers. Some of you are not. Like, telling a story may be really something that feels foreign to you and it doesn't feel like a natural skill. Either way, I just encourage you to think about and retell your stories. Maybe that's a memory that you don't have good backward stories from your family, but maybe you've created some great stories with your children over time, and you can talk about that time you went sledding, or talk about that vacation you had, or talk about that time that child really overcame a tough time. And it continues to build that group identity within your family or within your community. Again, this is one of those spaces that we're so busy doing our days that we forget where we came from and where we're going. And we're so busy trying to get to where we're going that we forget where we came from, which actually really informs who we are.
Story is so important. Story is so important. Ginelle mentioned it in one of the previous podcasts about, like, at our family reunions, we do every other year. And part of our family reunion is during our kind of last night together and throughout the entirety of it, but there's opportunity for stories to be told about our ancestors and where they came from and what they did and what they were great at, what they were not great at, like the good, the bad, and the ugly of, like, this is who we are as berries, and this is who we are as I forget the other last name. Sorry, fam. Guyton. Thank you, Guyton. My bad. Sorry, fam. But like the Guytons were this, and the berries did this, and we came together as a family, and this is how we made our mark in this world.
Right.
And this is who you are. This is what you carry in everything that you do going forward. And so in hearing those stories, even if you don't remember the story, but I can remember the feelings of, like, oh yeah, that's who I am. And so story is so important. And so that could be, I want to say this too, sorry, but maybe if you don't know story, be curious and ask someone for a story.
Ask someone in your family. I just took a trip out to Hawaii specifically to spend time with my uncle, because he is the family storyteller, and him being in Hawaii, I don't have a ton of access to him, but he's getting older, and I've lost my father, and so I don't have his stories anymore. And I've thought, I need to know where I am in this family, like what this family is. And I know pieces of it, but even them learning my story, because they knew me as the child of their brother, but they don't know me as a 40-year-old adult, and who I am and what I've done with my life and what my values are and what drives me and my stories of how I've lived. And so getting to tell my story and them hearing it places me into the larger story as well, which is also really powerful.
So awesome. It's so good. So that is child maturity.
Yes.
In its entirety. So in our next podcast, guys, we are going to be jumping into adult level maturity. So remember, that's ages 13 through the birth of your first child. You don't want to miss that, and because that's a really fantastic one as well.
Yeah, it's fun.
So we'll see you next time. You've been listening to the Table and Well podcast. New episodes stream every Tuesday. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review to let us know. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to stay up to date on all things Table and Well. To learn more, start your journey, or get information on how Table and Well can help develop your community, family, or teams to be relationally healthy and authentically connected, please go to tableandwell.org/collab to schedule an interest call, or you can email us directly at known@tableandwell.org.